Welcome to the Real Chili Podcast.
And the Golden Eagles of Marquette University in Milwaukee are bound for the Final Four for only the third time ever.
5 seconds left. Marquette down by one, trying to avoid the upset. Blue the drive, the left hand. It's good. 1 second to play. Vander Blue has put Marquette in front by one.
And I want to win every day as basketball players, as students, and I want to win every day, most importantly, as people.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Real Chili Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Lavender. I'm joined by the Pete's, Pete Mohan and Pete Worth. How you doing, fellas?
Swell. Yeah, I'm doing great. It's finally a white January down here in the good country of Kankakee, Illinois.
Well, here in Washington, D.C., we got our first snow and significant snow in like 3 years, and we got 5 inches. The city's going to be shut down for days, so I'm excited about that. But what I'm more excited about, in addition to Marquette's 3-game Big East winning streak, that we've got a special guest on the podcast today. Some of you may remember, some of our Twitter followers may remember, during the Wisconsin game, we ran a contest and said, hey, if you're at a pregame party, if you're waiting in line somewhere, if you're getting ready for this game, tweet us a picture of what you're doing, and the one with the most likes wins. Well, it took us a month, but we've got the winner of that contest on the pod today. Griffin is a senior at Marquette. Griffin, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining. We're thrilled to have you on.
Thanks for having me on, guys. It's been a long thing coming, but I'm excited to have it.
Yeah, and you definitively won that contest too, by being the only person who participated. But, it
was a unanimous win.
A unanimous win. Yeah, we were still thrilled to have you on because you may be the biggest Marquette fan at the school right now. We see you at every game. So for like the listeners, can you kind of tell all of our fans how they can recognize you at the next Marquette game?
So at most Marquette games, I'm always at the front row. During Christmas time, I was always wearing we had the holiday sweaters that they'd have that they'd sell this thing, and I always would get those, wear those. But most of the year without that, I'm always wearing like a D-Wade jersey with like a yellow shirt underneath. It's kind of my good luck thing. I did it when we beat Villanova 2 years ago, and whenever I wear that, we usually win. So that's what I usually have been wearing.
Well, I'd say it's worked pretty well so far this year, having not lost yet at Fiserv. And, you're pretty much front and center. Let me ask you this, actually. Back, in the Bradley Center days, is kind of like you wait in line and then they open the doors and it's a sprint to the seats. Is that the same thing that goes on at Fiserv?
It's actually a lot nicer now. So what happens is they let you in 2 hours into the main gate. We have to go into the back gate, the Johnson's Control Center, I believe. And we go in that gate. And 2 hours before, they let you up to this little hallway. And it's not a mad rush anymore. It's just everybody walks up there. Wow. And then they go to the front door. And then an hour and a half before the game starts, they let you into the actual stadium, and it's just a nice little walk down to the front row, not like a mad sprint at the BO or BMO.
Man, kids these days, you got it so good.
It's so organized. I'm impressed.
Yeah, and props to you for not losing your freshman zeal, because I know for the three of us, by the time that we were seniors, we were showing up maybe 5 minutes before game time, about 3 or 4 beers in. So major credit to you.
Yeah, we could only keep the first row thing going for 2 seasons, and then we started drifting higher in the stadium.
I actually only really started to go into it about last year. I mean, I was always in sophomore and junior year, I was in it, but what really happened was a couple of my friends. They've been doing it every single year. Their names are Eric Earhart and Alex Seton, a couple other people, but they have been front row for almost every single game since I started. Eric usually the one that's wearing the wig on. He has the suit thing on. He always comes to every single home game. He's always in front row. They started it, and they adapted me into their culture and added me to the group chat about last year. So
Griffin, you're clearly a big fan. always in the front row. You know, it's funny since you know, we started DMing on Twitter. I think I've seen you at every single game, and we always text the fellows, oh shit, there's Griffin. So last night was the same thing, or yesterday afternoon, I should say. Marquette picked up its third win in a row in the Big East. Marquette is now 3-1 in the Big East, in second place overall in the standings, and we got a gritty 70-66 victory over a Seton Hall team. This wasn't a typical game for Marquette, at least as we've gotten used to him this season. Marcus Howard put up a ho-hum 26 points. We saw an incredible game from Theo John. We saw a good defensive effort from Sakar Annam. Griffin, from your perch in the front row of the student section there, I'm wondering if you think back to the Seton Hall game the other day, what were some of your big takeaways as you were sitting there in terms of the vibe of the arena and how the team came out with a lot of energy?
The vibe was absolutely wonderful. It's been every single game of the Pfizer, say, like, minus the exhibition game at the beginning of the year when not many people showed up, but every single game since then. And ever since we started beating ranked opponents, it's just been absolutely wonderful there. I mean, it's been loud. It's been rowdy. I mean, even the student section's been really getting into it. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun there, and it's fun to have a good team now.
Yeah, we talked about that last year a lot, you know, Mike. Like, we talked about the waning crowds and the student enthusiasm and what it would take to improve those numbers, and we got our answer this year. It's just about winning, you know.
It's just about winning, and it's just about having those numbers in front of our own name, right? Marquette, 21 in the AP poll, but with, you know, a couple big wins since then. So let's get maybe a little bit more into the Seton Hall game. I think we saw this was a game Marcus Howard was coming off his 53-point performance. Early on in the first half, and even at halftime, Marquette had almost a double-digit lead, pushing a double-digit lead. Seton Hall was not shooting the ball well, in large part probably one, to Marquette's defense, and two, getting used to the sight lines of the Pfizer Forum, as they pointed out on the TV broadcast. But what I think we saw, and Pete Mohan, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what we saw in the first half was a good Marquette defense taking advantage, and maybe our offense wasn't hitting its full throttle, but we were able to piece together a nice first half and come away with a 10-point lead.
Yeah, I think that in the context of the entire season so far, this first half of the Seton Hall game will probably be undersung, but I thought it was one of our best halves of the year. It wasn't an explosive half by any means, but I thought that the offense was balanced, even though Marcus, I think, had 18 in the first half, and the defense was solid throughout. And, you know, there was multiple times that I caught myself shouting, oh, good D. Like, yeah. I'm just, you know, a guy moving his feet or staying in front of a guy, and it's impressive how just the little things like that of moving your feet on defense puts you in position to better contest shots. And, you know, there was definitely some times where Seton Hall was defended well and just kind of threw up a prayer. And I think that that's the kind of defensive effort that we really need from this team, and the reason that, you know, we'll eventually be successful in the Big East.
And a lot of some of Seton Hall's offense in the first half, I'm going to totally butcher this name, came from Sandro Mamukelashvili, and he's averaged. That was pretty good. He's on the season averaging 36% from three, but he really, you know, at least in the first half the other day, that's one of the guys who on the scouting report you're not going to focus in on. Aside from his couple of threes in the first half, Marquette held Seton Hall to 1 from 7. From 3-point range. So it was a good defensive half heading into the break there at halftime, Pete.
Yeah, and then things quickly kind of changed there in the second. And frankly, with as poorly as we played for the majority of that second half, I mean, we're very fortunate to get that win yesterday. With the defense kind of falling apart a little bit, especially down the stretch. But the thing that saved us, I mean, yeah, Marcus turned the ball over a lot in this game, and obviously Marquette, I think, had their worst turnover day of the season with 20.
Someone said it was like our worst turnovers in a win that we've ever had in our Marquette history.
Wow. Right.
No, they were wrong. We had 20 plus turnovers this season versus Charleston Southern and Bethune-Cookman, and then 20 versus Kansas State. So
how could I forget the Charleston Southern game?
Come on.
But Marcus made all the plays down the stretch when he They had 2 dribble drives into the lane for easy floaters, and then he found Theo John on a couple rolls to the basket. When we needed big buckets and big plays, he was there for us like he has been pretty much all year. And we made our free throws. That's the other big thing.
In addition to the times that Marcus found Theo, I think there were also a couple times where Theo was wide open on a roll and
true.
Marcus didn't find him. So I think I'd like to see him make a better read on the pick and roll sometimes, especially when the guy is standing wide open under the hoop. He's got to hit Theo in those cases. And part of it is probably his height and not being able to see over the defender every time. But when a guy's that open, you got to find him. And the other thing I just wanted to ask, what is it like seeing the offense from behind the basket? Do you think that there are a lot of missed opportunities for the bigs that you see just coming open down there? What's your take on that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's been a lot of times this year I've been yelling at the TV, out in court, hit the roll, man, because there's been a lot of opportunities that we could have that are just easy little layups that Marcus just doesn't really see Theo or see Ed or whoever the roller is. And it's kind of frustrating, but I mean, I guess it does hamper him because of his height to be able to see it sometimes. But yeah, there's a couple times I wish that he would hit the roll, man, and not try to force the layup or force a contested mid-range. But
yeah, I think that's a great point. And I think it's kind of a product of a couple of things. One, Marcus, like you said, isn't that big of a guy. So his sight lines are obstructed to a certain degree. His arms aren't as long, so that can limit his passing ability. But also he, if there isn't something obvious that jumps out at him, he's looking for his shot, right? And he may be onto the next little hitch within the play that's been called. So within this game, Pete Worth, neighbor, mentioned it. Marcus had a number of good plays, but I want to single out, I think, 2 guys in this game that in absence of another 53 or 50-plus point night from Marcus Howard, I think Theo John and Sakar Annam have really continued to distinguish themselves. And so let's talk a little bit about Theo first. Theo got a lot of minutes. I believe this was a career high in minutes for him. He finished with 30 minutes. In large part, that was due to apparently Ed Morrow rolled up his ankle sometime at the end of the first half or early second. We don't have a timetable for his return at this point. But Theo's stat line, 10 points, 4 for 6 from the free throw line, a couple of clutch free throws for Theo, 3 for 6 from two-pointer, 11 rebounds, and 3 blocks. Take that aside, Griffin, I want to direct this to you because your perspective from the crowd. What I see on TV from Theo John is really the first time in a long time when we've had an authoritative big down there who's not going to take shit from anybody, who's going to talk right back at you. You saw a little bit of that on TV the other day, but I don't know if we can say enough about Theo's presence down low and the attitude that he brings this team. To me, it's changed this team completely. What do you see, Griffin? Do you see some of that? Do you hear some of that chatter down there?
Oh yeah, you can definitely see it at almost every single game. He's usually just getting into his guy. Someone on the other team, I think it was, I'm trying to remember who it was, but starting to get into it with Sam on one of the plays at the second half. Second half it was, and they're starting to get into it with Sam, and he came over and started chatting at that dude, trying to tell him just, hey, chill, that's my guy. So it's definitely nice to have an actual authoritative center finally. I mean, not that anything against Matt Help. I mean, we all love the milkman, but just it's the fact that we actually have someone that can have a little bit of force to him and be a little bit aggressive.
Matt Helt is brave, but I don't think that he would be as effective in enforcement as Theo is. But yeah, I think that it's important for this team, and I think that it's really part of the key to our great defense this year. Not only the additional, shot blocking at the rim and his presence down there, but I mean, defensive rebounding. The boxing out this year has been great. You can't be number 10 in the country in defensive rebounding and not be great at boxing out. And not only is that Theo, but that's has to be a team effort. So I think we got to give props there to the coaching staff and the team to really pressing on their fundamentals in this case and being able to put a body on a body when shots go up. Because otherwise, we've seen it so many times last year, especially getting killed by offensive boards and the other team getting second opportunities, A lot of times those scramble plays lead to open threes and stuff, and I think that's a huge difference in this team.
And Mike, I think you're spot on in what you said about Theo kind of changing the entire dynamic of this team, not only by his shot blocking ability, but just his shot altering ability. And Sam Hauser mentioned it in the post-game press conference yesterday. But if you try to watch every possession that Theo is on the court, whether or not he makes a block or not, just watch how the opposing team, when they get to the basket and they see him coming, has to alter their shot at the rim. And that's something that we haven't had. And it's probably the reason why our defensive numbers have improved so much.
So another defensive component to this game, and I think one of the big reasons why we won is that Sakar Griffin, who was stuck on Miles Powell for most of the game, was able to hold Powell below his season average in points. And actually, Powell had twice as many turnovers as he's been averaging. He had 5 turnovers in this game. He's averaging about 2.5 for the season so far. Sakar, in this game, in addition to his defense, I believe he finished with 14 points. Someone check me on that. Let's see. Yeah, Sakar finished with 14 points. So one of Sakar's better games of the year, I think you heard that from Wojo. 14 points isn't going to blow anybody out of the water, but when you couple Sakar's performance on the defensive end and just constantly dogging a guy as good as Miles Powell, that is a real weapon to have, particularly in the Big East, actually, when you're guarding guys like Pons, when you're guarding guys like Powell. You need someone like Sakar to throw in there, and he did a fantastic job, Griffin, against Powell last night.
Yeah, no, I have to agree with that. He was definitely one of the highlights of our defensive effort last night, I believe, at least. I mean, everybody did really good, but he was just phenomenal against Powell. Yep. He shut him down fairly well. I mean, he's still at 21 points, but it's impossible to guard a great guard like that to the extent of shutting him down completely.
Yeah, and he shut him down the stretch when he needed to. Powell had a couple he hit that big 3, I think, that finally gave Seton Hall the lead. But when Marquette needed to kind of clamp down defensively down the stretch in the last 2 minutes of the game, they did a good job of forcing the ball out of Powell's hands, I thought.
One last thing about Sakar, and I think that his best play of the game, at least offensively, was when he drove in and he jump stopped and pivoted and found the driver.
Joey.
Joey. Yeah. An amazing cut by Joey to read Sakar's drive and play off of it too. But that was kind of what I was talking to in a previous pod about seeing how Sakar's game develops secondarily off of his drive. If he's not finishing and he has to come to a jump stop, is he going to make a smart play? And I thought that was a huge play, a great pass by him, and I'd love to see more of that.
There was a point in the second half. It was I think it was like a minute or 2 left, and Sakar had great defense on Powell and had his hand in Powell's face, and then Powell just thought that he'd try to get the foul off of it, and Sakar was good enough to just get away from it and just let Powell kind of force a shot up, and I think he airballed it too. That was wonderful.
Yeah, he tried to like a James Harden type deal.
Yeah.
And failed.
That was one of the many calls that Seton Hall fans are salty about not getting last night. Geez, the amount of butthurt from some of these teams. That's
a good segue too.
Yeah,
they were complaining a lot. I mean, I think that McKnight was his name. He was every single time he felt as if he didn't get a call or anything. He was always on the refs just to try to get something. But I mean, and he was complaining even like stepping out of bounds and stuff like that.
Let's get into that in just a second, because I think there is an interesting point in the foul disparity, or at least the free throw attempts disparity in the second half. But before we get that, one more shout out for Sakar Mohan to build off the point that you were saying. We've said early this season and even into last season, I think you have been really harping on this, is that the more Sakar can drive and get into the lane and be somewhat of an offensive creator, the better off this team is going to be. And he's always had that ability, but it seems like in the past, when he's been driving into the lane and then he's kind of got stopped, he's either done something like turn the ball over, traveled, not made a good pass. I think what we're seeing is that he's not so much gotten better at finishing or been able to get through, but when he doesn't have a clear opportunity, he's not panicking anymore. And I think you see that in the past to Joey Hauser. You see that in other decisions he's made, either kicking it out, that he's getting his confidence in terms of, I'm not going to panic. I've been here before. I know what to do. I can kick it out. Guys are going to be cutting. And that's a big positive for this team, because obviously they're going to be nights. It's funny to say it when Marcus has 26, but obviously they're going to be nights when Marcus can't carry this whole team. And so if Sakar can continue that progression, it's a big deal.
Well, especially when Joey doesn't have a game that we've grown accustomed to seeing him play. He had a little bit of an off game last night. But also, Mike, when it's referring to Seton Hall, it's booty hurt.
Booty hurt. All right, so Mohan, let's kick it over to you, because it seemed like you wanted to.
Well, I just wanted to talk about the refs thing, because I didn't realize that Seton Hall fans were that upset until you mentioned it in our text chain.
Yeah.
And for me, at least, I was pretty upset with the officials and how they were reffing the game towards us. The one that really stood out was that offensive foul they called on Marcus when he was driving.
Oh yeah.
And the guy just slid his feet and undercut him. I mean, come on. That should have been an automatic 2 points for Marcus on a shooting foul. And there was other occasions. I just thought it was fairly unbalanced the way that they were calling contact at times. But, pulled out the win regardless. I'm not one to really get on the refs, and I don't think any of us really are. But
yeah,
the point has been made that Big East officiating has been somewhat lackluster this year, and I'd agree. I mean, it probably goes both ways.
Yeah, if you're a Seton Hall fan, you're on the road, and I can see an argument where you only get 4 free throw attempts in the entire second half. Marquette, meanwhile, gets 17 free throw attempts. That's a pretty significant disparity. You could probably make a case. But look, we have never made the claim that Marquette has won or lost a game because of the referees. We won't make that claim for anybody else. So, Griffin, I don't know, amongst the students, are you guys talking about that sort of thing? Are you guys – what are you seeing during the game? Do you get much of that? I know sometimes it's easier to see these things on TV.
Usually us in the front row are usually pretty vocal about, like, how whenever the refs come down, we chime in, just, hey, you missed something, Blue. I mean, there's a couple times that happens, but –
Is that how you say it, Griffin? Is that how you say it?
Actually, yes. I usually am just yelling, hey, Blue, you missed a call, or hey, Blue, why can't you see this? Do you need to borrow some glasses? Some usually very PG chimes, may I add, but
right.
sometimes nonetheless.
I'm glad to hear they were never on their knees blowing the game.
Jeez.
Yeah, no, I hadn't heard that one in a while, actually, from our student section, but
I'd have to bring it back.
hey, we can. But yeah, there's definitely some opportunity, or sometimes that, like, there's just, especially this last game. I mean, there's missed calls both ways. There's a couple times I was yelling, why don't you call that? And like, I think it was a point where Howard came up to take the charge, or he took the charge and they didn't call a charge on him, but he did a jump stop afterwards, and they called a travel, yet one person's on the floor and one person probably did the charge. So we were all screaming, you can call something, you just can't call a travel. You have to call a foul on something. So it's
agreed there.
There's been a couple times this year that it's been bad. I mean, Big East I think they need to figure out something with the refs this year.
After a big week for Marquette, a huge game at Creighton, and I think Wojo made this point in the post-Seton Hall presser, it's not easy to get a win like the one we did against Seton Hall coming off a game like Creighton. Like, that is an emotional trip that these kids have to go through, and so I think that's impressive. But there's no break. We are headed on Tuesday, January 15th, to my not my hometown, but my current place of residence, Washington, D.C., where Marquette will take on the Georgetown Hoyas, who are coming off one of their bigger wins, certainly of the Big East season, but also of the year, where they got a double overtime win over Providence here in Washington. So, Georgetown is ranked 96th in Ken Palm, but this has historically been, coming to DC, coming to the Verizon Center, has been a tough place for Marquette to play and walk away with a win.
Yeah, not only did they win that game, they won on a buzzer beater by Mac McClung. They're kind of, I wouldn't call him a superstar freshman, but he's kind of like a freshman phenom in that he's
he sent it to overtime.
Athletic. Oh, is that right?
Yeah, he hit the near half court shot to force overtime.
Gotcha.
And then they won by 6 in double OT.
Okay. So Yeah, that's going to be a tough game. I mean, every away game in the Big East is going to be tough. That's for sure. But I was thinking about this yesterday. So Marquette's 3-1. We're lucky to be there after two kind of squeakers, especially the Creighton game. Yeah, all we've kind of talked about leading up to the Big East season was the parity that we knew was going to exist in the Big East. And now that we're 3-1 and kind of escaped these last two games, I've just been thinking, like, fuck that. Let's go out and just fucking take this conference.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. Like,
go 14-2. Who cares?
Like, we haven't lost a game at home. Yeah.
Or 6.
Like, we haven't lost a game at home.
Whatever.
We're going to have a lot of tough games on the road, but we've shown that we are learning how to win.
That's a great point. And I was thinking of something similar the other night where, we have that, Wojo basically undefeated in the past 10 games in overtime. Mm-hmm. But you look at the Seton Hall game, you look at the Wisconsin game, Louisville. So you have the overtime games this year. You also have the Seton Hall game. I think there was one other one that was close down the wire but didn't end up going to OT. Griffin, this team is finding ways to win towards the end of the game, even if they need an overtime. Like, maybe you can take out the Creighton one because that was such a unique circumstance. But it's so important and something we haven't seen from this team in previous years, finding ways to win. I don't care how you do it, finding ways to win down the stretch with different pieces. Sometimes it's Marcus, sometimes it's someone else. That is a next level for this team that they seem to be finding, and definitely one you need in Big East play.
Oh, yeah, it's definitely a welcome thing to have. I mean, we show that we actually want more on most teams, which we haven't really had the last couple of years. I mean, there's been a couple times we just get out of it and we're just have our heads down, just not really caring about it. But this year, it's wonderful to have a gritty team that just wants to win, especially if and it shows with like this Crane Hall win, the Wisconsin win. It just shows that when we get down, I mean, we're not necessarily out. We still want to come back and win the game. And even if, especially the Seton Hall game, you saw that our threes weren't falling, and we went to other means just to get the win. So it's welcome. I love it.
Yeah, that's a great point. I don't think we hit a 3 in the second half against Seton Hall.
We were 0 for 9, and just because I spent a few minutes looking this up, we were also 0 from 9 for 3 in the first half against Presbyterian this year. So it has happened before.
One thing I do wish, would turn around a bit is it seems like Chartouni has had a bit of a dip in his game these past few. And again, he had 0 assists and 4 turnovers in 11 minutes, which you just can't have from a guy who is going to be one of your primary ball handlers when he's on the floor. Mm-hmm. So it's fine if he's not directly creating shots. That's okay, but you can't be turning it over at the same time. And, Jamal Cain also 3 turnovers and no assists. So in those 22 minutes from those two bench guys, 7 turnovers, no assists, that's got to be tightened up a little bit.
Yep.
And I thought that Theo did a good job too with as many minutes as he played. We have to give him credit. He wasn't turning the ball over in the post. He had 1 turnover, but also 1 assist. And, if he's getting the ball in the post regularly and he's not shuffling his feet or getting unnecessary charges, I think that's great. And it's a huge help to keeping him on the floor because we want him to reserve those fouls for defense. So smart play by Theo on the offensive end.
I just want to shout out his ability to this game. I mean, he had a lot. Morrow was out. He knew that going into the second half, and it was incredible to see him just have the restraint to not foul anybody so he could stay in the game. He's kind of had issues with it this whole year, but this game he definitely showed that he has the ability not to foul people if he has to.
And I think it's one of his best stat lines of his entire career. 31 minutes, 50% shooting, 4 of 6 free throws, 6 offensive rebounds for a total of 11 rebounds, an assist, a steal, 3 blocks, only 1 turnover, only 3 fouls, 10 points. So double-double, including 6 offensive rebounds. I mean,
yeah,
if we get that from him every game, we're going to be extremely hard to beat.
And 2 of those free throws were clutch. I mean, right. Those were huge free throws.
And only 3 fouls while defending the pick and roll against Miles Powell, which is, it's not easy to do.
All right, folks. Well, as we've said in recent podcasts, this season keeps on getting more and more fun. Another tough challenge coming up on the road Tuesday night here in Washington, D.C. against Georgetown. Griffin, I want to throw it to you for any final thoughts, anybody you want to shout out, maybe your prediction for the rest of the season, how you see this going?
A catchphrase?
A catchphrase, yeah.
I can't think of any inventive catchphrases right now, but I kind of want to shout out all the front row people that sit with me. We go every single game. I think most games were there like 2 hours at least early. I mean, for Wisconsin game, we were there. I was there with a couple other people at like 9 o'clock in the morning. Woke up, got dressed, put on all my warm clothes, and headed over to the game. Had like 20 layers on, but it was worth it. But yeah, I want to shout out my front row people. And then for my predictions for the rest of the season, I think that we'll get probably at least one or two more losses at least, maybe even 3. But I think otherwise we'll be going out of the Big East pretty unscathed. I mean, there's been a couple teams that have had troubles with, like Seton Hall. I think it'll be hard at home when we play them, but otherwise for the most part, just there's a couple teams I don't see as struggling against us.
Joe Lunardi has Marquette pegged right now as the number 6 seed. Do you think we stick to that? Do you think we can improve that marginally or stay about the same?
I think it depends the level of our competition coming up here. I mean, if Villanova proves that they're, that they can actually be better than what they've shown past couple of games, I think that they'll be definitely a hard team and help improve us and maybe get us up to like a 4 or 5. But that or a couple of the other teams that have been pretty strong in the Big East historically, I think that'll help us. But otherwise, a 6 it sounds about pretty good for what we've had for the season.
It's a hell of a lot better than what we had last year.
I just want to say that this next stretch is really interesting for me on the schedule because we have 4 games I think that we probably should win before we go on the road to Butler. It's 2 away games sandwiched around 2 home games. We face Georgetown, Providence, DePaul, and at Xavier. So I think those are, if we are really as good as we think, those are 4 games we should win. Hopefully we don't toss them away, but I think going 3-1 in that stretch would be acceptable for me. Mm-hmm. And, never want to lose to DePaul at home. No way you should lose to Providence at home. So I'm really intrigued to see if we can build on our road momentum after getting that first road win at Creighton.
And Griffin, everybody follow Griffin on Twitter. He's going to have to change his name this week, since right now it's Griffin Anderson, Marquette ranked 21. I think it's going to have to change in the favorable way after this week. But you also are a fan of according to your bio, you're a fan of Marquette, Bucks, the Heat, the Packers, the Patriots, the Brewers, the Red Sox, the Bruins, and the Predators. How the hell do you have time to be a fan of all those teams?
I have a lot of time in my hands. So most of them come from, I have a lot of family. I'm from Wisconsin originally, so I have all the Wisconsin teams, of course. But then I have a lot of family from Boston area, so I've kind of adopted most of the Boston teams besides the Celtics. As a Bucks fan, I can say don't like the Celtics. But and then Predators because the ties to Milwaukee is the AHL team, and then
good point.
Heat just because of D Wade. I mean, that's mostly been it. But and also, I mean, they have. Mostly just D Wade and the culture they've had down there. But so yeah, I mean, it's a lot of teams, but I can defend everyone. I promise you.
As long as you're not spreading yourself too thin on Marquette.
No, of course not.
All right, Griffin, thanks so much for taking the time to join the show, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for spending your Sunday or Monday listening to this episode of the Real Chili Podcast. Signing off for the Pete's, Pete Mohan and Pete Worth. And for special guest Griffin, I'm your host, Mike Lavender. Thanks for listening to the Real Chili Podcast. We'll talk to you next time.